welcome to this edition of the Scanner Guys. I'm Jonathan Higgins, and we've got a great show lined up for you this evening, so welcome to this broadcast. I'm really excited about. We're talking about the SDS100 and 200, which we talk about every so often. I mean, they're the latest and greatest Uniden scanners that are out there. If this is your first time joining us and you're asking questions in the comments, we're going to get to that in the second half of the broadcast. Basically, how the broadcast works. It's a little bit about an hour or so. What ends up happening is we do the topic of discussion, and then shortly after that, we answer your questions. So make sure you stick around for the second half as we answer your questions. So relax and enjoy the show. Let's take a look at tonight's slide deck. All right, here's a topic of discussion. We're talking about the SDS100 and 200, which I'm really excited about. All right, so let's take a look at, make sure we follow, like, and subscribe to our social media, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram at the Scanner Guys. Make sure you do that and shop our store. And contact us through the website and sign up for our newsletter as well. So really looking forward to tonight's presentation. All right, hopefully I'm not too loud. We're actually using a brand new software for broadcasting, so bear with us. So we had a great discussion a couple weeks ago on the Scanner Guys, but don't forget, we have our Train Aficionado shows, which run the first and third Wednesday of the month. Last Train Aficionado show, we actually had a produced video, Holiday Junction at Cincinnati Union Terminal. They actually have a model train set that Duke Energy sponsors each and every year at Cincinnati Union Terminal. So we did a video highlighting the display there, and they had a lot of great artifacts from when Cincinnati Union Terminal was a bustling station. So really awesome. So definitely check out the video and also subscribe to the Train Aficionado YouTube channel as well. Well, we have another class coming up. So the Cincinnati Union Terminal and the Cincinnati Railroad Club and trainaficionado.com are hosting a Scanner 101, railfan style. So we're going to be talking about scanners and rail fanning and how to get the most out of your scanner. If you're in the Cincinnati area, check out the YouTube description down below and sign up for this class. It's certainly a great class. It's going to be about 2 hours on a Saturday, January the 7th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So definitely join us for that. So tonight's topic, we're talking about the SDS100 and 200. A fan favorite, that's for sure. So let's continue on with the slide deck. We're going to go over the layout of the scanner. So let's take a look at it right here. So we'll start off with the Uniden SDS100. This is a favorite of mine. I certainly like this radio because it's portable and it works really well. Let's take a tour. So of course we've got an SMA connection, a multifunction knob which is controlling the volume and the squelch. Pretty new to some of the newer radios. There's soft keys on these Uniden radios. In this layout, basically it's a system, department, and channel. The very important power button. So basically it's a button. It's not turning the volume knob to turn it on. There's an actual button there. And many of you are familiar with the avoid channel, which is otherwise known as the lockout button. And of course we have the menu button on the side of the radio, the function button, and then back up to the antenna again. So very common things that are on the radio. Of course, there's a lot of function plus, a button, which then gives you access to a different memory or to a quick key. So certainly there's a lot to that. With a lot of the GRE Whistler radios, there's a fewer function button applications, and there's more buttons on the radio. So Uniden style is usually less buttons with more function plus a button for an event. So when the radio first came out, there was a smaller battery. So a lot of you that got the first production of the SDS100 remember getting a skinny battery, which is seen on the screen right in front of you, way over to the right. And of course, it had a smaller battery door. Anybody that purchases the radio now has the larger battery and the larger battery door. So the older battery is still available. You can actually purchase it from Scanner Master. They do have the smaller battery and smaller battery door. But the thing is, the larger battery, of course, is going to last longer than the smaller battery. So that was the reason why they upgraded to the bigger battery. It was because they wanted to get extended life on the radio. Of course, it's got that full color display. It's running digital trunking systems, and of course, it's going to suck down the battery a lot quicker. With that larger battery, you can get anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. So this radio actually went back to a battery pack. Most of the Uniden radios now, other than the SDS, take AA batteries. So a little bit of a difference here with the battery, but you can still get the smaller battery if you're a fan of that through Scanner Master. So looking at the SDS200, very similar, very much larger. I mean, this is the largest display outside of the HomePatrol 1 and 2. Full color, as you see there. The soft keys going left to right, system, department, and channel in this case. We have the USB-A jack. We have the mini SD card slot right on the front, which is really convenient. We go to a micro USB jack versus a mini. Most of the radios in the Uniden product line nowadays have the mini. This one actually uses the micro. So you better hold on to that cable that comes with the radio. Don't discard that because that's going to be needed for this radio here. We've got the LAN port, internet jack. We do have two multifunction knobs there. Of course, power and volume for the top knob. And then the bottom knob is a squelch and a push in for the menu. And then, of course, we have the headphone jack in the front. And we also have the function knob, which is right above it. And the other cool thing that this radio has is the light indicator, which you can customize the colors as well. Same thing you can do with the SDS100 as well. There's a light indicator on there as well, so you can customize that, by color. Let's say if you wanted the fire department's red, the police department's blue, and so forth. You get the idea. So with this radio, how does it work out of the box? Essentially, it's going to handle P25, Phase 1 and Phase 2. It's also going to be able to do NXDN, DMR, and Pro Voice, but as you see here, that's an added cost for those digital formats. So what I recommend, if you need it, add it onto the radio. If you don't, you really don't need it. It's going to be able to do P25 Phase 1 and Phase 2. It's going to do EDAX, Molar Roller, LTR analog. It's going to do the typical FM wide, FM narrow, and of course AM. So all the traditional things that most scanners do. The added options, DMR, NXDN, and Pro Voice. Those can be done a couple of different ways. If you want to do it yourself, purchase the radio, register it through Uniden's website. Once it's registered through Uniden's website, then you can make a purchase of any one of these formats for the particular radio. Once you purchase it, you're going to receive a key that's unique to that particular radio, and you're going to go into the menu, and then you're going to go into the update section and then select, let's say we would do an NXDN. We would go to NXDN, put that key into the radio, and then it would activate that portion of it so it's able to pick up NXDN. So it's really simple. It's really great to be able to do if you're in an area where there's any of these digital formats. I know when I lived in Massachusetts, the MBTA was using Pro Voice, so it was really great to be able to monitor Pro Voice and the MBTA's bus and subway ops. As for commuter rail, they were using analog conventional communications. As with many of the other radios that are in the Uniden digital radios, I should say, and the BCT15X, it uses the dynamic memory architecture. So basically, system, group, and channel. We've talked about this before. It's like an onion, and it's got multiple layers. You know, the outer layer is your system. The next layer is the group. And the next layer is the channel. So you've got the 3 layers, so you're kind of peeling it back. So when you were programming the radio, let's say if we were programming it by scratch, we would first create a system. Within that system, we would then put together a group. And then under that group, we would put together all the channels or all of the talk groups, in this case, on this slide. So that's where everything would be listed there. So it's a great memory system. I know it's a big leap if you're used to scanners with banks. It's a little bit more, how shall I say, banks on steroids, essentially. So, great segue. Programming the SDS100 and 200. So let's take a look at some of those options. We can dive right into here. Many of you are familiar with the Uniden Sentinel software. You have the ability to update the firmware, database, global settings, and of course creating a favorites list or editing it. You can do it through the Uniden Sentinel software. The thing that we always recommend at the Scanner Guys is we strongly recommend updating the firmware in the database as soon as you purchase the radio. Unless you have like Scanner Master do setup and optimization, it's already done. But if you're doing the radio yourself without setup and optimization, what I would recommend is downloading the Sentinel software from uniden.com and then updating the firmware and the internal database. We also have the Butel ARC 536 software with a pro and a basic version. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you rather build the programming from scratch and you're familiar with the Butel software, we strongly recommend using that. It's very much like ARC XT or any of the other software that Butel came out with. And also they have a pro version, which gives you that virtual control. So you're able to see the various hits that it gets while it's scanning, and it'll log it. And you can also control the radio, as you can see there, a virtual screen of the SDS100 or 200 right there. So it looks really cool. Now, you're probably wondering, how do I operate the Sentinel software? So we strongly recommend checking out our video. We actually did one on the channel not too long ago. Uniden Sentinel software walkthrough. And basically we go over updating the database, updating the firmware, and of course the main subject of this video, creating a favorites list. Believe it or not, it's relatively simple to create a favorites list. It doesn't involve a lot of work. Just take a little bit of time using radio reference to do some research, finding out what frequencies are where or what talk groups are where, and then basically you go into the database and you load them into a favorites list. Almost like going to the grocery store. Envision your favorites list is like a shopping cart where you're loading the various goods in there. What you're doing in this case is you're putting in the frequencies or talk groups, loading them into the shopping cart. So definitely check it out. I really go through detail on how to create a favorites list. I mean, it's a lot of fun creating favorites lists, and of course your radio can support many favorites lists, so definitely check that out. This is the question that we get all the time. What makes the SDS100 and 200 different? A lot of people ask, what is the big deal? Why should I consider the SDS100 or 200? Let's take a look. These radios have what's called an IQ scanner. It incorporates a software-defined radio technology. What that means is less hardware, more software-driven. So the radio can be updated or changed with firmware updates. So really, it's pretty much like a computer. You know, it's got an operating system, and then it's able to do various tasks by software it's given, such as firmware. So it's more driven by firmware versus having a whole bunch of hardware, which can create some limitations. Only the hardware will allow it to do X, Y, and Z. With it being an IQ type of scanner, it's more software driven. The next thing that's big is best on Simulcast. A lot of people ask, what is Simulcast? It's involving trunk systems. Basically, a Simulcast trunk system, which you'll see if you were here in Cincinnati. The site for Cincinnati, the city, is a Simulcast trunk site. So that means that there's multiple towers across this site. Each one of the sites share the same exact frequency set at each tower. Each tower is transmitting the same radio transmission on the same frequency. So think of that plus sign in the middle. You're in the middle there, and all these towers are basically sending a signal right to your scanner. So there may be a little bit of latency in processing. Plus the binary code is hitting your radio at the same time. It's like putting that binary code into a blender. It gets confused. So your traditional scanner is, whoa, I don't know what's going on here. And basically what ends up happening is the scanner gets confused. It starts to hiccup, or it starts to just basically dead air. It's not able to decode it because the binary code is confusing it. Each tower has the same site ID, so it's not able to differentiate by the tower. So consider it, basically one Simulcast site is a whole bunch of towers, and the same signals are hitting on the same frequencies. So the SDS100 and 200 is able to distinguish and be able to work the best on Simulcast. Where the other scanners get confused, this radio basically is able to zero in on one of those and not get confused, and it makes for the best signal on Simulcast. Here's another thing that Uniden really beefed out this particular radio. It has two different display modes. It has the simplified display mode, which looks very much like the HomePatrol 1 and 2. Very similar. Basically, the top line is the site, the next line is the department, and the following line is is channel. And you can customize the other fields. You see option 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And the same thing down in the bottom with the various options down there. You're able to customize the screen. So if you're an advanced user, you may want to take advantage of this. You're able to change the colors, maybe put certain things on the screen in different spots. You have the ability to do that. And this is the simple screen here. The detailed, look at this. This is the geek display. If you want all the information, what's going on and the particulars, this is the screen you want. It's going to show you a whole bunch of data. It's also going to still show you the system, the department, and the channel. You can see it's more smushed in the middle there, and then you've got some information on the top and of course on the bottom. So you can customize any of these fields. Now keep in mind, this one and the other one can be set up through the Sentinel software. So this is the best way to be able to program it using the Sentinel software. And I believe we're going to do a video at some point, kind of going over, how to change the display and customize it. So definitely look out for that on the YouTube channel. That would definitely be a good video. So basically the detailed display and the simple display. If you're driving in the vehicle, I would say the simple display is the best, because if you glance down, everything's nice and big. You can see the 3 lines: system, department, and channel, relatively easy. If you're using this scanner at home and you're not going to be distracted by driving, or distracted by the scanner while you're driving, I should say, the detail mode is probably the best for when you're at home, because you're able to kind of look at the radio and not only look at the 3 major lines, but look at any of the other fields that you've set up. These are all the things you can customize here. We actually incorporated in the slideshow right here, so you can put in all these various options. It tells you where you can put it in on the scanner screen. And guess what all these screenshots are from? The manual. So definitely, if you're interested in doing this, take a look at the manual, and it'll be able to go all over all of this. So definitely take a look at that as well. All right, so we've kind of talked about the benefits of the SDS100 and 200. Clearly, Simulcast, some additional bells and whistles on there, such as the larger display and, the IQ type of radio, where it's a software-driven radio versus a hardware-driven radio. So there's lots of benefits to the SDS. Now let's take a look at some of the alternatives. So we talk about these radios all the time. They're the clean slate scanners. So these don't have a database in it. And basically, you're going to have to program it by scratch by using the Butel software, such as the ARC XT Basic or Pro. The Pro Edition gives you that data logging, recording capability, and virtual screen. These radios are relatively inexpensive at the digital level. They have the add-ons just like the SDS100 and 200, the paid add-ons for DMR, Pro Voice, and NextEdge. They also support 25,000 channel storage and GPS scanning, just like the SDS100 and 200. Take a look at the 436 and the 536. Very much like the SDS100 and 200. These come in a little bit more expensive, but they are not the SDS100 and 200 with the capability of Simulcast. So if you're in an area where there is Simulcast, you can make this work, but it's not going to be the best performer. There are many ways to program this radio, just like the SDS100 and 200. You can use the Sentinel software. By using that, you can program in a favorites list. You can program it, of course, just like the SDS100 and 200 with a zip code, because it's a database scanner. I would highly recommend the 536 as a mobile radio. This is what I'm using right now. Believe it or not, I'm not using the SDS200 as a mobile. I'm using the 536. Believe it or not, it works fairly well on Simulcast because I'm constantly moving. So when you're rolling all the time, when you're traveling from one area to another, it may have some issues here and there, but a lot of times you're moving away from one tower and closer to another. So I really haven't had a lot of issues with hiccuping with the Simulcast because I'm a rolling target. And then, of course, I have a pretty simple wideband antenna on the vehicle, so it works pretty well on that. I highly recommend for these two radios using a favorites list. Pros and cons of the SDS100 and 200. So we've talked about the pros. Best on Simulcast. Top performer with digital decoding. The large, full color display. Cons. The price. It is certainly a higher price unit. Both the handheld and the base mobile do have a hefty price tag. It's an okay performer on analog. Keep in mind that these radios were both made for digital, so they work extremely well on all digital formats. They work okay on the analog, so if you're in an area where it's primarily analog with some digital, you may want to consider one of the alternatives I mentioned earlier, like the 996 and the 325, or the 436 or the 536. Both radios have a larger footprint. You think of the 325 as a small handheld radio that fits in your pocket. The 436 is very similar in size, like the SDS. The SDS200, how many of you remember the 780 XLT? If you don't own one of these radios, it's very similar to the size of the 780 XLT. It's a little bit taller. It's about the same width. Of course, it needs to be a little bit taller because it's got that large display. I have both of these. They work really well, but they are an investment. So definitely keep that in mind. What else is there to the SDS100 and 200? Well, let's take a look. There's lots of accessories that are available, and there are popular accessories like the external battery charger. I strongly recommend this. It's great to be able to pop the battery out and charge it in an external battery charger. If there's ever an issue while charging the battery, it's not going to damage your $650 radio. You can go and buy another external battery charger and a battery. It's a lot cheaper doing that. Uniden has it available. Basically, the external battery charger comes with an extra battery. So that means you'll have two large batteries, the one that came with your radio and also the one that came with the battery charger. The SDS100 takes a special SMA to BNC adapter. So basically, there's a ridge on the top, which kind of makes it somewhat weatherproof. Doesn't mean that you can throw it in a pool, but basically if there's light rain going on out there, you can probably be okay. That requires that special adapter. It's not the chunky SMA to BNC adapter that Uniden typically has. Basically it's a smaller thing that you see right there. Because of that ridge that's on the top of the SDS 100, requires some SMA antennas that are a little bit different. Rimtronics has embraced the SDS100. They have several exclusive antennas that are for the 100 with the smaller base, as you see there. The thing that we haven't talked about is GPS scanning. Most of all the high-end radios support GPS scanning. What that basically means is you can use the full database and travel from point A to point B, and what it's reading in the background is latitude, longitude, and radius, which is in Radio Reference's database. So when you move across the country or wherever you're heading, it's going to turn things on and off based on that information. That's the GPS kit down in the bottom right corner. We also have desk mounts. As you can see there, the SDS in the desktop mount there. A simple thing makes your shack look really nice. And, you can put, the SDS200 in there, and of course, like a 996 or a 15X, or a Whistler or a GRE radio or Radio Shack radio. It will fit in there in that case. And that's something that you can check out through Scanner Master's website. Carrying case. I can't say enough about it. I've got my radio right here. I got a carrying case on it. This is a $650 radio. Spend the extra money and get a carrying case. The great thing about it's going to protect it, keeping it looking new. It's very easy to bump into things and put a little scuff mark into it. This will protect the radio from that. It'll keep it looking new. And there's a couple different cases. All the stuff that I'm showing to you on the screen is available through Scanner Master. The cases are available is a nylon case, a hard leather case, and then, of course, the glove leather, which I have on this radio. We'll show that momentarily. All right, that is the complete guide of the SDS, in a nutshell, pretty much. Let me just show you this carrying case. So this is the glove leather case, which I really like. Works really well. It's got the speaker holes down here. It's got vent holes, because sometimes the radio does get a little bit warm. It's got over here, so you're able to get to your jacks. The bungee to hold the radio in. It's not going to go anywhere, but the bungee's there just as an added precaution. The ridged connection. Let me just show you that so you can see what if you haven't tried it or looked at it, I should say. See the ridges right there? It's a ridge connection. So basically your standard SMA antenna won't fit. You see how this is right there? It's got a small little connector there, so basically it's going to go in here. Screw it in like that. And of course it's got a opening over here for the menu and function button, and then there's the for the connector, whether you're doing the belt loop or the belt clip. It's actually over here. But yeah, I mean, the carrying case is certainly well worth it. We very much say if you're going to spend that amount of money, invest in the case. Certainly is a great thing to look at. There's a lot of questions. I'm going to try to get to as many of them as possible. Let's take a look. I'm not too sure if this will allow me to do it. We're going to try something here. We're actually broadcasting with, yeah, it works. Woohoo! That's cool. Okay, the Smiley antenna. Rick, I saw your question. I'm not too sure if this is the same Rick that emailed me. I got to get back to you. I've been so busy in between my full-time job and doing this and the Train Aficionado show. This is the Smiley antenna. I can't say enough about this. My dad loves this antenna. He says it works really well. The great thing about this antenna, it's made right here in the United States. It's made by a small family that owns the company. So it's supporting local business. It's not available through Scanner Master at this point, but you can order it directly through Smiley Antenna. It's one of the best railroad antennas I can say. What I'm going to do is actually show you how to find it on the website. So bear with me for a second. Smiley Antenna. I'm going to load it up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at it together on the screen. So hold on. So here's the website for Smiley Antenna. So in order to find this antenna, what I would recommend doing is going over to Commercial, Railroad, or Scanner. And then right here is the antenna that I have. It is the Slim Duck 160 megahertz antenna. It goes for $24.50, and you can choose the connector. So in this case, if you got the 125 AT, you're going to choose the B and C connector. Of course, if you have any other of these radios, like Belfung or any of those Chinese radios, of course you have to do some research and find out what female connector it has on it, and then do the appropriate connector. So basically, for most of us, we're going to do the B and C connector if we're using the 125 AT, because that's the connector that's on the radio. But I would certainly recommend this antenna. Works really well. While you're on the website, if you're aviation enthusiasts, there is a whole line of aviation antennas, which I haven't tried. So certainly take a look at that as well. Some really good stuff there. So I would strongly recommend checking those antennas out. As I said, United States company, made right here. Small family business. I can't say enough about them. I mean, definitely support small business. I would strongly recommend checking out their products. Let's go back to your questions and let me just see if I can pull it up. Bear with me. Here it is right here. Nope, that's not it. Maybe this is it. Okay, so with the SDS, it has to be programmed. You can use a zip code to program it, of course. But if you're using this outside of Canada and the United States, you will have to program it for those local agencies. Basically, this radio looks at United States and Canada's database. So if you're over in the UK or somewhere else, you would need to program it using, Butel's ARC 536 software. I would recommend creating a favorites list over the zip code. Now, here's the reasons why with the SDS. It tends to pull in way too much. Typically, if I put in a Cincinnati zip code right now, it probably would pull in, I think it would probably pull in 500-600 things, depending on how many service types I have on. So what I recommend to you, take the time, learn the Sentinel software, and program a favorites list. As I mentioned, that video that I posted early in the slide deck walks you right through it. Do a little bit of research on radio reference, and then follow the steps in that video of creating a favorites list, and then download it to the radio and run the favorites list. You're going to love it. Because basically, you're telling that radio exactly what to listen to, versus the zip code, which is telling it way too many things. Analog simulcast. That's not... Simulcast is basically when it comes to digital. Zeros and ones, binary code. For the most part, the SDS is made for digital. I saw a question about that, about simulcast analog. It's basically pertaining to the digital end of things. So think of it as digital as that binary code, zeros and ones traveling in the air. And think of two people talking to you at the same time, at the same volume. You can only pay attention to one conversation easily and understand everything they're saying. You'll pick up parts and pieces of this conversation, parts and pieces of the other one. So with everybody talking at the same time, it's hard to follow. So with digital, it's binary code, so it's zeros and ones. So what ends up happening is it hits the radio and it gets confused. It'll do that, you'll hear that, or it'll just drop out. The audio will drop out like crazy, and you'll be missing parts and pieces of the communication. That is the simulcast issue there. SDS, USB. Okay, so Rick J asked about the warranty on the SDS 100. And he has the USB connection. He says that it's gotten loose and it's past the 2-year warranty. What I would recommend doing is Uniden does have a repair department, and you definitely want this connector to work. I would recommend, sending it to Uniden. They do charge a fee for taking a look at the radio. If they need to do anything else, they'll let you know. But I would recommend getting it repaired. You're thinking of that connector on the side of your radio serves a couple different purposes. You're, of course, going to plug it in for power. You're also going to may occasionally charge the batteries inside the unit. The biggest and most important thing, if you're not using an SD card reader, and you're communicating to the radio's SD card via the radio, you're using that jack as well. Way around it is to be able to use an SD card reader. So what you do is you take you turn the radio off, take the battery out. You would slowly move the piece of metal that's in there holding the SD card, slide that SD card out, that micro SD card, get a micro SD card reader for your Windows machine. It does not work. Sentinel software, I saw a question about that, only works on Windows. It does not work on Mac, unless you're using Parallels or some other software that allows the Mac to work off of Windows. Once you've updated the SD card, then you would carefully put it back into the radio. Keep in mind that little door, the metal door there. Be careful, take your time, and make sure you pay attention how it slips out and how it goes back in. So take your time with that. But I would strongly recommend, being careful and not rushing that. Let's take a look at some other questions that we have here. Go over to the other one. Third-party antennas. Great question. Let's take a look at ScannerMaster's website so we can kind of take a look at some antennas that I would recommend for the SDS. And if you're purchasing anything from ScannerMaster tonight or any time that you're watching this broadcast, there's an affiliate link down below in the description. That helps us here at the channel be able to operate the channel, such as the software we're streaming tonight is not free, the website hosting and what such. So if you want to support the channel, certainly hit that affiliate link. When you do purchase something using that affiliate link through ScannerMaster, we get a little tiny bit of the sale, and that certainly helps us out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to ScannerMaster's website. We're going to take a look at a couple of antenna options. Great question. So we have a couple of different antennas. Let me just see if they're listed under the SDS100 accessories page. So these are all the accessories that you can consider, for the SDS100. Of course, we have a replacement high endurance SD card. We also have the easy to read manual. This is available at Mark Scanners, but it is a hard copy of this book. The hard copy allows you to be able to look at it at your leisure without being up at the on the web, like having to look at the website all the time. Of course, we have other accessories here. Those carrying cases that I mentioned before. We've got the hard leather, the nylon, and the soft leather. The antennas that I would recommend to take a look at is the Rimtronics. As you can see right here, this Rimtronics antenna is made for the SDS. It's got the smaller base, so it'll be able to go into the radio without a problem. It's got the rubber gasket. This antenna works really well in the 800 megahertz and the 700 megahertz. So if you're primarily listening to that band, I would strongly recommend this antenna. It's very affordable, $29.95. It is 6 dB gain over the standard antenna. And believe it or not, it does work pretty well in some of the other bands as well. So if you're primarily VHF, UHF, you may get some pretty good reception on UHF and VHF. It's not too bad on there, but keep in mind it's not going to be the best performer because it's a tuned antenna to that particular frequency band. So that's one antenna that I would recommend. The other antenna that I would recommend, and of course, my past colleague, Rich Carlson, recommends this one as the wideband antenna. He actually mentioned this to Austin Antenna about this antenna, making it so it would work with the SDS. And you can see that the rubber down at the bottom is trimmed, so it'll be able to sit on the SDS100. So this antenna here, which is currently out of stock during this broadcast, is a rubber duck antenna. Works really well in all bands. Works really great. I would highly recommend this antenna as well. And if you're looking for something, if you're traveling, in the car and you don't want to put a permanent antenna, then I would recommend the Spectrum Force wideband antenna with mag mount and SMA. This works very well with the SDS100, and it's also available in a B and C version for the SDS200. This is a wideband antenna, so it's going to work very well in all bands. This is also a great antenna as an alternative if you're not able to put an antenna outside of your home. You have the ability of sitting this on a windowsill, or maybe if you're able to snake the coax cable outside of the windowsill and sitting it there, maybe on an air conditioner unit. Those are some of the antennas that I would certainly recommend. And these are some of the accessories that you can keep in mind for Scanner Master's website. How I got here is accessories and then Uniden accessories, and then I basically selected the SDS100 page. So that's certainly something to keep in mind there if you're looking for some accessories for the SDS100 and 200. Let me look at some more questions and comments. The leather case does work with the larger battery and the smaller battery. So certainly if you're using the smaller battery, you may want to put a little bit of styrofoam or something in the back here, because let me take the scanner out of this case so you can see. So the larger case bumps out here. You can see that it bumps out quite a bit. The smaller case is flush with the rest of the unit, so it's all flushed down. Because this is a larger battery, they had to make the battery door larger. As you can see here, I'm going to open it up. It's deeper, and there's the, I don't have a battery inside of this right now, but yeah, this is where it is. And there's the little door for the SD card. And you have to be absolutely careful with opening it. Basically, you just slide it, and then the door opens. You slide out the SD card, do your programming, and then slide it back in, and then you're all set. Just make sure the door closes, and be real gentle about it, because it is not the strongest heavy-duty thing in the world. So keep that in mind. Let's take a look at some other questions. Can we do an episode entirely on quick keys and function abbreviations on the keypad? We certainly can. That's definitely a good recommendation. We have done quick keys. One of the Joes in our audience is an expert at quick keys. Love to have him on the show so we can go into detail on the the ins and outs of the quick keys. But yeah, I can definitely do a show about the functions, abbreviations on the radio. So that's certainly a big thing. So if you're in an area where there's analog only, would it be worth investing into a digital radio? Only to pick up one or two channels. I certainly probably wouldn't go with an SDS100 or 200 if that's the case, because it's the most expensive digital radios out there. Now keep in mind, there's still the GRE and the equivalents of the 500 and 600, which I can show you right now on the screen. We'll go over there and show that. So let me share that. So if you're looking for a digital radio that's not out of budget, I would recommend the Whistler 1040 or the 1065, which is the base unit. These two radios are not terribly expensive. They're only able to work on phase 1 digital. So if that one channel is phase 1 digital, then you're fine. If you're trying to monitor a trunk system that's phase 2, then these radios are completely out. This is more of a radio that's able to handle digital conventional and phase 1 digital trunking without a problem. Will not do NXDN, DMR, or Pro Voice. It'll do just the basic phase 1 digital, as you can see there. And this is probably a radio I would lean you towards if it's suitable for that particular area. As for something a little bit more capable, I probably would lean towards the Uniden brand and probably look at the 325 P2 or the 996 P2. Those are not going to be as expensive as the 436 or 536, and certainly wouldn't be as expensive as the SDS100 or 200. And if you're just looking for something that's straightforward, non-800 megahertz, and you're monitoring analog VHF, UHF, the 125 AT is a good option. And if you're looking for something a little bit more beefier, for base mobile radio, the BCT15X is another option for analog. Those are the radios I probably would say to take a look at. But basically, it depends on location, and what you're looking to monitor. If you've got questions about that, I would recommend contacting ScannerMaster. They'll be able to answer that question. Basically, they're going to ask you where you're located, what's your zip code, what city or town are you in, what agencies you're looking to monitor in that area. If that's the case, then they will look and see what they can recommend to you. Let me just take a look to see what other questions we have. I think I covered a vast majority of the questions. A lot of check-ins tonight, a lot of questions, great questions out there. I hope I have gotten to all of your questions. Another good option, which a friend of the show, Joe Bearcat, recommends, is the HomePatrol 2 is another good option. Nice big display. The cool thing about that is it's got a touchscreen display. So you're able to, pause it on a channel by just basically hitting the channel line. The HomePatrol 1 and 2 are the only scanners out in the market that have a touchscreen display. HomePatrol 1 was the first generation of the radio. HomePatrol 2 is the second generation. So certainly, the HomePatrol is certainly a good radio to keep in mind. It is a database scanner, so you can program it through the Sentinel software, and it works really well on digital and analog. Ones we haven't talked about, and Radio 80 mentions this, is the TRX 1 and 2. TRX 1 and 2 actually work pretty well on both digital and analog. These are Whistler radios. They don't do DMR and NXDN trunking. They have capability of doing the conventional stuff, but they're not able to trunk it. So if you've got a trunking system that you're looking to monitor with DMR or NextEdge, you want to get something on the Uniden side of things. Matt B., I totally agree with you. I'm hoping that the HomePatrol 3 comes out with some of the technology that the SDS100 and 200 has with the touchscreen display. I'm definitely a fan of that as well. Just see if there's any other questions that I can answer before we wrap it up this evening. Any other questions that you may have before we do wrap up the broadcast? Certainly post it in the questions right now. Yes, Matt, I do agree with you. A lot of simulcasts in Rhode Island, especially in the Providence site. I was living over, when I was in Massachusetts, living over in Attleboro, Mass, which is a stone's throw over from the Rhode Island state line. Believe it or not, I got the site that was north of Providence, Rhode Island better than I did the site that was in downtown Providence, Rhode Island. Basically, there's a couple of different sites spread across the state. I was talking to a gentleman over the phone some years ago, and he lived up in northern part of Rhode Island, and he had the same issue. he was having a hard time trying to get Providence, Rhode Island, that Simulcast site. He said once the fall came around, he started getting it. Believe it or not, when the foliage comes off the trees, it actually improves reception. It's one less layer that the signal's got to go through. Think of, the signal from here to the tower, wherever it may be, is going to go through walls, it's going to go through other buildings, it's going to go through trees, it's going to go through a whole bunch of different things. Also, the land, there may be gullies, hills, and things in between you and the tower. But when the foliage comes off the trees, it's a huge help because basically it's one less thing that the signal has to go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remind you of a couple things that are coming up next on the Scanner Guys show. So let's take a look at the slide deck before we wrap things up, and I'll check before we sign off if there's any additional questions. So let's take a look at the slide deck right now. And as always, the Scanner Guys are brought to you by viewers like you. When you support the Scanner Guys by shopping the merch store at thescannerguyshow.com, you can get hats. You can not yet hats, but you can get T-shirts, hoodies, stickers. We've got a couple of travel mugs, whole bunch of cool stuff on the website. So definitely check that out. Also, you can order stuff through the website, through ScannerMaster, through the affiliate link down below in the description. We do not get a huge part of it, but we get a little bit of it, and be able to support the channel. So we certainly appreciate you using the affiliate link. So definitely consider that when you're purchasing anything through the website. Make sure you check out our Holiday Junction video from the Cincinnati Union Terminal. It was a great program that we put together for last Train Aficionado show. The video is available through YouTube. Make sure you go over to the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. The next Train Aficionado YouTube show is December the 21st. Scanner Guys, we're looking back and looking ahead. It'll be our next topic on the Scanner Guys show, Wednesday, December the 28th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you check it out because we're going to have a great show. I'm sure it's going to have a lot of your questions, and we may actually have a couple other things coming up on that show as well, so stay tuned. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to our social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at The Scanner Guys. TheScannerGuysShow.com. You can shop our store, contact us, and sign up for our newsletter. We would appreciate you signing up for our newsletter as well. And let's see. Let me take a look at this question here. So you've set the channel to priority, is that right? And you're not picking it up. So that might require a little bit more diagnosis. Give ScannerMaster a call tomorrow, 1-800-722-6637. That's 1-800-722-6637. Unfortunately, that's going to be hard for me to answer here because I need a two-way conversation with you, and somebody over at ScannerMaster may be able to assist you with that. You may want to check, did you create a favorites list? If you created a favorites list, make sure that you have this service type selected, turned on. That may be the case. There may be a few other things, but I would definitely give ScannerMaster a call, talk to one of their scanner experts over the phone, and they may be able to diagnose the problem. Unfortunately, with some of these questions, it needs to be a conversation over the phone, and a lot of times, there's a couple of things but we would want to suggest you trying and seeing if you've already tried it already. But as Joe Bearcat mentioned, he agrees with me. checking service types, see if they're turned on. But yeah, I really think that definitely give them a call tomorrow. They may be able to assist you with that question. I guess that's about it. I really appreciate everybody joining us on the broadcast. What is this? One other. Which units? We don't sell scanners. ScannerMaster does. So you would go to ScannerMaster's website and take a look at that. Basically, I don't work full-time anymore for ScannerMaster. I'm basically a contracted worker, so they control the prices and do all that. So definitely go to their website, scannermaster.com, and you can see how much their scanners are. All right. Well, I thank you so much for joining me this evening. We hope that you join us next week for Train Aficionado Live, and then the final Scanner Guys show on the 28th. Both shows air on Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, live on the YouTube channels. Of course, Scanner Guys live on the Scanner Guys channel, and Train Aficionado live on the Train Aficionado channel. Make sure you subscribe to both channels. We appreciate everybody listening and watching the show this evening. Be safe out there.